All right, we are on YouTube.
Okay, good. Let's call the meeting to order, 10:01. And Mark, do a roll call for us.
Uh, we have John Mulligan, Paul Goodrow, Ken Swallen, Brownie Fuqua, Lucy Morelli, Rick Sanders, John Coyle, and Steve Mara. We are awaiting Lindia, so we have a quorum.
Okay, good. We only have two items. Uh, we have this special meeting to propose two change orders for the pickleball project. It sounds to me like we cannot move forward with this project unless we approve these change orders. Now, John Mulligan, John Coyle, Mark Cezanne, and myself have deliberated this particular issue last week over a few hours. We've been in touch with the contractors, so we're going to present to you today the issue and the proposed uh, settlement of the problem. So with that, I'm going to ask John Coyle, chairman of the Pickleball Committee, and Mark to present the problem. So with that, either Mark or John, please proceed.
Well, Mark, do you want to talk about this?
I can just give you the background. So when Fast Dry was on property and they started their demolition work, they removed the asphalt and the existing shelter that was uh, there at Court 3. They removed Court 3, they removed the fencing. And in order to expand the courts northward, they had to just demo the white vinyl fence that was behind the pickleball court and move closer to courts 4 and 5. Moving closer to 4 and 5, they found that at that north west corner, that elevation, if it was going to be consistent with courts 1 and 2, that the elevation of that court was substantially higher than the existing tennis courts by about a foot in total. I think it's a foot off of the ground elevation and about 6 or 8 inches above the actual court. So originally we kind of thought that we might be able to share a fence line with the pickleball courts, but that's not going to be able to take place because of the difference in elevation and height. We can't have water pouring onto the tennis courts. We also can't have if you want to call it a barrier or a dam against that fence where no water would be able to leave courts 4 and 5. So he had to tell us that they needed to install a concrete barrier. They also had to do a fill and bring it to grade. We also found that the courts 1 and 2, if 1 and 2 were here with the shelter in between it, what we found was they were actually like this. They were on a parallelogram. And in order to make courts 3, 4, and 5 that were coming over here squared up with them, they had to cut off and square off the pavement and parts of the court and fence line on courts 1 and 2 to bring that straight down so they could add 3, 4, and 5 butted up against that completely in a straight line manner. So there was some, I guess you want, discovery on Fast Dry's part about the existing nature of the courts themselves and the elevations therein. So that's why the change orders came about.
Okay, I'll ask John Coyle to make a motion and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, I make a motion that we sign the change order agreements with Fast Dry and have them proceed with their work right away.
Okay, any discussion?
I second it.
Okay, good.
Was
We have
that
a
motion
second?
for 2 change orders or 1 change order?
There are two. Change
Mark?
orders, plural, two.
Question. I looked at the old contract and the change orders, and then you gave the explanation for this. The change orders, I don't understand how they address the problem you talked about. In other words, the first change order includes having some fill and rock. In the original contract, it reads that there, if necessary, to regrade and add rock as needed to existing base. So I can't relate the problem you discussed with the change orders. Change order, if I read it, one of them is about some fill and some additional demolition, and the other one's about some fencing.
Yeah, I think
So I
What
can't
you were
relate the
reading-
change orders to what you described. Mark.
what you were reading was addition to the base, but we're not dealing with the base. We're dealing with the periphery. That's where they discovered the problem.
So the additional demolition was the squaring up of courts 1 and 2 and taking out all that extra demolition, taking out all that extra pavement, and that fencing area and getting that back down to grade. And the other side of the other change order has to do with installation of the concrete barriers that are going to be high enough to be able to hold the rock and fill, which is a part of the contract. So they're not charging us for rock and fill, they're charging us for the preparation of that area to include the concrete barriers to hold the rock and fill so that it doesn't bleed out. Currently, the existing courts 1 and 2 don't have any barriers on the side. They just have the rock was down and then the rock slopes off like this. There's nothing to hold that pavement sort of in place in reality. But over on one side by the tennis courts, it's got to have a barrier wall this high so that the fill can be put stuff here, packed down. This barrier wall also has to have the fence posts in it as well, so that it can hold the fence posts that have the acoustic barrier along that 90-foot line. So and those fence posts have to be built in a different manner. So therefore we couldn't use that was another problem. We couldn't use the tennis fence lines because they don't have the same capability to manage that acoustic wall.
Okay,
So
do we
it's
have
really
any
for-
other questions?
Really for concrete, not for fill. There's the concrete barrier needs to be put in, and then the other was for the demolition that was not included because they found out that the courts were not square and they had to redo that area, line it off, cut the concrete, remove the fence line, and get that all squared. And that additional demolition and work and takeaway for the pavement and the other for dumping loads were in excess of the original contract.
Well, that's change order number 1 you just described, right? Go ahead, Mark.
One other question. Does the fence behind courts 4 and 5 on the tennis courts, will that stay there? Is that the only fence between that and the pickleball?
Yes.
In other words,
Yeah.
there's not another fence.
Now there's
Line
gonna be
fence.
4 and 5 are gonna have their own fence, and the pickleball courts are gonna have their own fence. There's just gonna be a very minimalistic amount of space between the two, probably in the nature of 6 inches, which
So there
will
will be
provide for
2
drainage.
fences. Okay, so there will be 2 fences
Yes,
Right.
with only about 6 inches in between.
yes.
Any other questions?
The only question I had was, why are they signed that the payment is immediate on signature? I mean, I've done a lot of change orders and I've never had it that it's due immediate on signing. Until the work's done, or a portion of it can be, but not, immediate payment on signing.
I don't think they're gonna get immediately anyways, because we run our payables. I think that, we'll probably be pushing those through over the next week or two. So I don't think that there's a lot of, I don't think it's gonna be immediate, but I don't think we can wait till the very end of the project to have it complete to pay those two
Well, I'm
projects.
not suggesting that you wait until the end of I just wondered why, it says in the contract that we pay immediately on signing.
Yeah. Well, he's been very forthright and spent some time with us answering a lot of our questions the other day. I think that we're probably in a good space with them as far as how we need to manage that payment.
Okay.
Any
One
other
question.
questions?
Just one question. Does this have any impact on the timeline?
It shouldn't if we act on it.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising
Aye.
your hand. Aye. Mark, can you take a poll?
Can I see hands in the air, please? One more time. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lindia, I can't tell about you because you are muted and I can't see your face.
Hello.
Are you in
Yes.
favor?
Am I what?
In
Yes.
favor?
Can you hear
Yes,
me?
you are. All right. Well, then we have unanimous.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Let's go to item number 2. And Mark, you can explain this one. This is more perfunctory. So why don't you explain the issue?
So every year, a certain amount of tennis courts get done. Usually it's 3. And we have that money in the reserves to take care of that. Court 1, which we were hoping to get redone this last year, did not. However, it is in need of some resurfacing. So we asked Ritzman to perform the resurfacing on 4, 5, and 6 as a part of the general reserves, as it is done every year. And if they could add a little bit to take care of number 1 to get us through season all the way through the end of this year into next year, because they wouldn't be able to come back and start those demolition on those courts until after probably May or June. And those during this 6 months, court 1 is got the bird baths and needs its lines done, and it's got this going on from just the use and the play and the rain and everything else that we've received. It hasn't been resurfaced in many years. So we asked them to add that perfunctorily to make it. They gave us a great price compared to the other quotes that you see there. They've kind of been a good vendor for us and been taking care of the courts. I think courts 2 and 3 have turned out to be some of the more popular courts to play on now that they've been redone. They drain the fastest now. They're in great shape. So we'd just like to see them continue as our vendor.
Okay, good. All of this is in the reserves.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, do we have any, number 1, I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, need a second?
A second.
Okay, John Coyle, any discussion?
I have a couple of questions, and just
Go ahead.
because I'm not familiar with the vendor. So I heard you say, Mark, that we've used this vendor before.
We've been using Ritzman for a number of years. They're the ones that rebuilt courts 2 and 3 this last year.
Okay, thank you. And
They
I
also
just,
did work. They've done work on the other courts, and also, yeah.
okay. Their contract was quite vague in nature compared to the other one. So you have no concern around the details around scheduling and number of days and process and payment schedule, all that?
No, Carlos works with us real well. They're very familiar with our operation here and understand the courts very well.
Okay,
They've done a lot of
Yep.
work in the fencing area as well. They've done a lot of work to help us in other areas. And in the past, we used to have to get a fence company to come in and repair the fences around the courts that were being redone. They've taken that in-house and are actually doing it themselves at a less cost than our current Russ Carter fence provider. So it's been a good partnership.
okay, thank you for that background and for the details. I'm fine, thank you.
Mark,
Any other questions? John
John,
Mulligan.
so Mark, what you're saying is pretty much we're getting the 3 courts done and then he's pretty much doing court 1 for minimal cost, correct? Just to get us
Yes.
through next year.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mark, I don't see anyone. Do you?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand.
All right,
Mark, take a poll.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our business for the day, and thank you all for accommodating this special meeting.
Our next
All right.
meeting is on the 26th at 9:30.
9:30.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Need a second?
Second.
Second,
All in favor signify by raising your hand.
Make a motion.
Thank you all.
All right.
Am I way
Thank you.
behind?
Yeah, you're way
You're
behind,
behind.
dear. John, have a good trip.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Okay.
take care,
Bye.
folks.
Bye now.